this is it's exciting. You know, last week was the ice storm that kind of delayed things, but it's all good. We had a backup plan to keep the podcast kind of started for the new year. But
awesome.
I thought I met you probably about a month ago. You came into the spa, and we had a good conversation then. And I thought, hey, it would work out really well because as we'll get into today, you're planning something really cool for like the wellness businesses in town, and you've also got like a new wellness-based startup in Peterborough. So you are one of two partners in a business called Naturally Nested. Is that correct?
Yeah. My business partner, Rachel, her and I have been friends for a long time, and then we actually married cousins, so our husbands are cousins.
Okay.
And kind of around the same time, we had babies together and kind of just went through all of that together too. So it just made sense that we would go into business together.
Yeah. And so I also think it would be good. Eventually we'll get Rachel's side of the story too. So I think hopefully we can kind of focus on what led you into wanting to start your own business. And so first off, what is Naturally Nested? From kind of the description or whatever, I believe you're referred to as a maternal support practitioner.
Yeah. So that's kind of the new term for doula. So doula is a term that's eventually going to be phased out from what I've heard in the community.
Okay.
Because people don't really know what doulas are, right? And the biggest question we get asked is, well, what's the difference between a midwife and a doula? And there's a big difference. So now the new question will be, what's the difference between a midwife and a maternal support practitioner? But I mean, I think the term is pretty self-explanatory in that we wouldn't be medically trained to order any kind of tests or provide prescriptions or examinations or anything like that. We are the support. So whether that's emotional support or educational support, we kind of go in and help families when they're either trying to conceive or all the way through to that postpartum period. And I think just based on my own experience and what I've kind of seen in our community, there's a huge need for that right now.
Okay. Yeah, because it hasn't been very long since I first heard this term doula. Like, I don't know, it's not kind of the realm that I'm normally well versed in anyway. Yeah. So is that a fairly new term as well? Because like I believe, you know, like the whole midwife is essentially something that everybody seems to know, kind of like goes back a long time.
Yeah.
But the doula is that?
I don't know about the term specifically, but I know that the role of the doula and kind of that support person for families has very deep historical roots. Okay. And you can look back in various cultures and see like doulas have always been there. Just whether or not they've been called a doula, I'm not totally sure.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, because it's like the first time I heard it, I had no clue what it meant. And thinking back, it's probably like only a couple of years. Yeah. Which is kind of, it's interesting. Yeah, whether it's the term or whatever. But so that's cool. What kind of led you down the path to want to get started in business, running your own business?
Yeah. There definitely are a lot of reasons. But I think the biggest reason for me is I'm a mom. So I have two kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-month-old. And I've always known that I wanted to be a mom. I didn't really know growing up what I wanted to do career-wise, but I knew I wanted to be a mom. And so when my husband and I decided we wanted to start our family, that was a big conversation of how can we prioritize family and yet still allow me to kind of have projects on the side that kind of keep me, right? And not get totally wrapped up in the mom thing that I forget who Colleen is. And so it's very easy to do that even with your own projects. But so I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and it just wasn't realistic to work for another company and be a stay-at-home mom. Like it just wouldn't work with that. I wouldn't have the flexibility that I need to run out if something was going on, you know, or to just be at home all day with my kids, right? And my son and I are starting like a preschool this week. So I'm really excited. Like I wouldn't have that opportunity. And I think my husband and I have been very fortunate and blessed to be able to afford that, because for a lot of families, it's not possible to have kind of one parent stay at home, right? Especially for families where there's just one parent. And so we just feel very fortunate and blessed and kind of want to take advantage of that since we were able to. So that's probably the biggest reason for me. And of course, that makes sense with being a maternal support practitioner, that I would want to be home with my own babies too, right?
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. And so what did the conversation with Rachel look like as you kind of came together? And do you have, I think we'll get into this. I know you've done the holistic nutrition side of it, but do you have like business school experience or?
No. And honestly, a couple years ago, if you had told me I was going to start my own business, I would have laughed, because it's so intimidating, right? Like, how do you figure out the legal stuff and the taxes, which we still are. I still don't know how to do taxes, right? That's why we have an accountant. Yep. But it seems very intimidating. And I think especially in Peterborough, there are so many accomplished women that it's easy to kind of compare what we're doing to what other women are doing and think, man, how are we ever going to get to that point, right? But, you know, we have our goals and our action plans, and we're kind of just working on putting those all into place, and things are coming together pretty good. I feel like this is going to be a big year for us.
Nice.
But yeah, I guess with Rachel and I, how that conversation kind of went, we both just sort of felt like, you know, there are quite a few other doulas in town, but we had a specific vision for how we wanted a doula business to look. And a lot of that goes along with the holistic nutrition side of things that I kind of bring to the table. Sure. And so, you know, I think for me, being able to help people nutritionally through fertility and pregnancy and postpartum is a big, I don't want to say it's like lacking in our community, but those resources aren't readily available for people, right? Okay. And so I think that for Rachel and I, being able to put that into our business model and offer that service to people, that was a big part of the conversation, because we just felt like we needed that, you know?
Yeah. So that's, so you did is it like the schooling in Toronto, is that correct? Yeah. The holistic nutrition place there? It's there's two in Toronto, the Institute for Holistic Nutrition, but I went to the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. Okay. Yeah, so that's is that kind of the route that you had been going down, more so like the interest in like that kind of, not necessarily fitness, but like nutrition side of it? Yeah, that's definitely my passion. And so the doula stuff marries very well with the nutrition side of things, but the nutritional side of things is definitely my big passion. And so my focus will be providing kind of nutritional support to clients. And even a few years ago, when I was pregnant with my son, I worked at Joanne's Place, which is a really awesome, like that was such a good experience. I loved being there, and I learned so much just from being on the floor, talking to clients, and there's all these different training opportunities. So I learned a ton from being there. And while I was there, of course, I had this big belly, right? And one thing I noticed is that as I started to show, people would be coming in, women would come into the store, and they would either beeline it to me or they'd be asking for, where's the pregnant woman that works here? Because people don't necessarily know when you're pregnant, you know, what's the best prenatal vitamin, and can I eat fish, or what's the deal with mercury, and like, you know, is it safe to do this or that? And so I noticed just from being there that there was a huge need for that. And so that spurred the nutritional side of things even further for me, because that's when I actually went to school. When my son was born, that's when I started. And so, yeah, it was kind of
just very clear that that was just like a very real, tangible need in the community that I could meet, right? That I had the passion for and the interest in. And yeah.
It's very true. And there are, there are quite a few like unique things about nutrition in pregnancy that are quite important to get right, for fetal development and everything. Yeah. Cause I also, I did a nutritional science degree, and I've also got the precision nutrition coaching. So there's a pretty big focus on like prenatal nutrition and everything. So and it's true. It's great to identify that's an area that's unique to your interest, and also combine it with like a business need. So that's like, I don't know, that's kind of what a lot of people say is really the key to getting something, finding that niche. And that's a very specific niche. So that's awesome to hear. And how long when did you start Naturally Nested?
We would have started it probably a year and a half ago.
Okay,
I want to say. Yeah. So it's still, I would say, not grassroots, but we're still working on things, and we have a lot of big, lofty goals for ourselves. Rachel and I are very ambitious people.
That's good.
So we have like 20-year goals that we're working towards. And the big one is to hopefully have a birthing center in Peterborough. I think that would be amazing. My sister went to Ryerson in Toronto, and she said every day walking to class, I would see this beautiful birthing center. And so she'd tell me all about it. And I'm like, why can't we have something like that in Peterborough? I mean, we have like the midwives clinic, but they just have one room. So if another woman is laboring there, you're either doing a home birth or you're at the hospital. So there really aren't that many options, I feel. And so, that's the big dream.
But you started, or are you, it's interesting, you're still basically based out of home, both of you, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I it's kind of tricky in a way, because for doula clients, like primarily you would just meet them at home, right? Especially if you're doing a postpartum service for somebody, like you're going to be in their home the entire time, right? Because you're there kind of making sure that things stay afloat while mom and baby are bonding and whatnot. And so if there are other older kids, you might be kind of doing a little bit of entertaining of the older kids, or maybe just some light housework, or maybe you're providing breastfeeding support, or holding baby while mom naps or takes a shower. So you are very much in their home. And so for right now, it makes sense for us to be in the home and to kind of meet, people in their space, right, where they're at. I really like that idea. But I recently stumbled across the Peterborough Business Hub, where you can actually like rent offices for appointments. And so I think for my nutrition clients, that might be a good option for us. But yeah, primarily we like to try and stay close to home for people. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if someone's pregnant. Like, you don't want to go out and meet someone at 6:30 at night. Like, you just want to be in your jammies at home. So again, just kind of like meeting people where they're at. So that's a big thing for us.
That makes sense. Yeah. The Peterborough Business Hub's a pretty cool place. Do you know, have you met Alyssa at Comfort?
Yeah, I met her. She's amazing. We had such a fun time. We went to Starbucks a couple weeks ago and met up. And actually, she was telling me about you. She was like, oh, you need to meet this guy, RJ, la, la, la. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've met him. Like, we're... So, yeah, she's great. And she has Comfort Keepers Peterborough right out of there, too. So she was actually the one that told me about it. And so I've reached out to them, and hopefully we'll get something set up in the spring. Yeah,
I've been in there to meet with Alyssa a couple of times, and it's a very nice place. It's really cool. If you've got I mean, obviously Flow Spa is like a different style of thing, but when it comes to wanting like a professional setting, but keeping the costs way down, it makes perfect sense. And it's like a really, really nice, well lit, bright, and professional looking place. It's cool.
Yeah. It's a wonderful resource for businesses in Peterborough for sure.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Kind of tying in with Alyssa and Comfort Keepers. And it was actually, you were one of the people that sort of inspired me to really get on board with the chamber quicker, because I think you had just recently signed on.
Yeah, we did.
Not too long ago. And how's that been going for you? Like, as far as the sense of community in Peterborough?
Yeah. So we just started, I think it was the end of November. So kind of with the Christmas holidays, we really haven't done a ton just yet. But we did get on Stu's News and Business Beat, which is on Global TV. So actually, Rachel's mother-in-law, her friend, told her that she saw us on TV, which was cool, because I'm like, we've only been doing it for like a few weeks. I didn't expect it to kind of move so quickly. But we've had a really good experience there. And Paul, who kind of does some of the member communications, he's just been really like approachable and very friendly and very like he pursues us, which is nice, because we get kind of wrapped up in our business and you almost forget the communication, like the not communications, but like the networking and sort of the marketing side of things sometimes, when you're so focused on like clients and specific kind of work that way. So it's nice to have someone remind you, oh, hey, like we have this thing coming up and you guys are invited to it, or whatever it might be. But yeah, he's been, and the chamber in general has been a good experience so far, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it kind of plays out through the year.
Totally. Yeah. Are you going to the PBX tomorrow for like the wellness thing? So
we were invited to even participate, but because of Christmas, there was no way we would be able to order enough like materials to be able to hand out to people and whatnot. Sure. And yeah, the shipping, when we went to order things, we were looking at the shipping dates and it was like, may get by January, whatever. And we're like, oh, we just can't take the risk that things wouldn't come in time. So we didn't hear about it until kind of last minute. But the next one that comes out, we definitely want to go to for sure. I'll probably just go.
You can still go and
general admission. Yeah.
And talk to everybody. I've got like a thing set up there.
Oh, perfect.
So,
cool.
It's obviously like it's hard to demonstrate float tanks or whatever, but we've got like the Normatec suit, like the compression suit that I think I mentioned to you a little bit before. And I'm going to take like the hip attachment because it's easy for somebody to step into and kind of see how it's working and stuff while I talk to them about the rest of the things we do here. So I'll be there tomorrow afternoon, and it sounds like it's going to be good. It's really nice. I find that it's really nice that they're doing something focused on like the wellness businesses.
Yes,
and
I love that.
Especially with it being the new year, and
perfect timing.
It is. It really is. That's like something Telsey and I were talking about this on the episode that came out today. So like we recorded last week, like the whole New Year's resolution thing is a big deal. I find it's a little more of a big deal now that like I've got a business. It's kind of, it's crossing that threshold into a new year and kind of looking at like a brighter future, like you said, with kind of having those long-term plans. What's coming from, with the nutrition background as well as now in business, what's your stance on resolutions?
It's so funny. My husband and I were saying, oh, we're not resolution people. Like we never. And for me, I always find the fall, like the start of a new school year, that's kind of my like I don't run from January to January. It's more from like September to September. And that's probably because I'm a very like, I'm always in school. I'm always doing something. I love learning. I love reading, and my kids are named after book characters. It's a big thing. So for me, it's more the fall. But yeah, this year I just like I kind of was telling you before, like with the resolutions and the goals for Rachel and I in our business, it definitely is a different feel. And with having kids, like my son and I starting this preschool this week, right? Like he's 2, so I don't know how it's going to go. Sure. But my goal is just to get into a rhythm, and just see how we like it and give it a try, and something for him to do where it's a little bit more stimulating than just kind of playing with his trains and cars as much as he loves that, right? But yeah, as far as business goes, I think it helps to have those resolutions or those kind of yearly goals, because then you sort of know, you can kind of see where your business is headed, right? And I think you need to kind of have that long-term vision. Otherwise, you're kind of just taking shots in the dark and you just don't know where you're going to end up, right? And if you're going to hit target or not. And so I think having those yearly goals is really important business-wise. And so one of our goals, besides the event that we'll talk about, is to get at least one of our online courses ready to go, hopefully by the fall. So a big thing, like I said, for Rachel and I, is we want to meet clients where they're at, right? So that's why we primarily try and meet in homes, in clients' homes. But another thing that we acknowledge and experienced ourselves through pregnancy and whatnot is that, again, like, you just don't want to go out. Like my husband and I with our son, we never went to a prenatal course because I just didn't want to go spend a weekend in a weird building with people I didn't know, and I just didn't want to do it. And so
it's not for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's a big part of why we want to get some online courses available for people, because you can just, you click, you buy, and then you watch it or you complete the course on your own time. And so one of our goals is to at least get probably the fertility one. I think we want to do a fertility one. And Rachel's really into fertility right now. She's a research junkie. Like, she is always telling me all these crazy things. And I'm like, I don't even know how you found that, but good for you. Keep doing what you're doing. So she is putting together, she's starting the fertility, I guess workbook or course, whatever you want to call it. And so we're kind of hopefully going to have that ready to go. Yeah.
That's awesome. I actually just launched a course online last week. So
cool.
if you need any kind of the technical side of how to put it together or anything, let me know if you need any help with anything.
We absolutely will. We decided.
I've done it a couple of times, so I know a few different ways to go about doing it, and I'd be happy to lead you in the right direction there.
Well, that'd be awesome. Yeah. And just seeing your gear here, I'm like, I would never know how to put even just that together. So that would be really helpful.
Yeah. And it definitely makes a difference, especially if you're going to do a video, which most people want video if they're doing an online course now. So something like the lighting is quite important for that. So I'd be happy to kind of show you the ropes about that. But that's a great idea though, and also when it comes to service-based businesses, I think you just build yourself up to a higher level, reputation wise, if you've got those information products, as they're called. So it's very smart. And so that's super cool. With the it's like you mentioned, the other thing that I have to still send in my my registration fee for. You've got the Peterborough Wellness Exhibition coming up at the start of March, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
And so what's that's another super cool thing, and how's that going? What exactly does it entail? And let's try to get more people on board with coming out to it.
So it's sort of funny. When my daughter was born in June, I said to Rachel, I'm just going to take some time off. I'm not going to do anything work business related. And I was saying to you when I came in the door, when you own your own business, there's no such thing as maternity leave or Christmas holidays. You're just constantly going, right? And so I think 2 months after she was born, I was listening to the Joyous Health podcast. She's a nutritionist in Toronto. Cool. And the podcast episode was all about how she built her business. And what I left that podcast with was this idea of what would I do if I wasn't afraid, right? If I wasn't afraid of failure. And fully formed, completely every detail laid out was this idea for a trade show, basically, called the Peterborough Wellness Exhibition. And I knew if I was going to do it, I had to go big. I had to really give it my all and kind of just hope for the best, I guess. And kind of the idea behind it is I didn't want it to be your average trade show, because that's boring, right? nobody really wants to go to a trade show. So we've been trying to add different things along the way to kind of spice it up. But the goals have always been to, I guess, among businesses, create more communications and networking, right? Because the way that small businesses thrive is through word of mouth and through referrals, right? So we're trying to do that for ourselves, but also for our clients. I want to have a list of people that I can for sure confidently refer my clients to, right? Knowing they'll be well taken care of. So it goes both ways, right? So the networking has been a big part of it. And then even like my own wellness journey, I've been making changes probably for about 7 or 8 years. And it's taken me that long to kind of create my care team of, you know, I know who my chiropractor is and my naturopathic doctor, and I know where I go to shop for this or that. And so a big part of it has been trying to kind of eliminate those years of searching for the community so they can kind of come in, general admission, they come in the door and they're face to face with all of these different practitioners. And we've tried to have a variety, right? So not just one person who does chiropractic care or naturopathic doctors, right? We try to have variety. So we have a couple of different ones. So you can meet a few different ones. And that saves people the trouble of, you know, sitting through an appointment and realizing, you know, I don't really vibe well with this person, or we're not on the same page or whatever it is. And so I want people to be able to put together their own custom care team at this event. Like I want people to leave knowing, okay, I'm going to book an appointment with this person or that person for whatever. And again, as I said earlier, like we don't want it to be your average trade show. So we have a bunch of different activities for people to actually do while they're there. So we have organic fair trade coffee and tea that people can buy. So there'll be like a little kind of mini cafe set up. The Play Cafe is putting together a little play space for kids.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then one of our sponsors, Dave Curtis from Century 21 Realty, is putting together live music for us. So we'll be able to have live music. And then the big thing is our speakers corner. And that will be kind of like a corner of the room that's sort of sectioned off for educational workshops. So different practitioners are going to be volunteering to kind of host a 20-minute workshop that people can come to. And again, it won't be an extra fee to do that. Once you kind of get in the door, like you can participate in whatever's there for you to do, right? And so people will be able to kind of go in and listen. And so you're actually leaving with more than just a handful of business cards.
Nice.
And that's what I really love about it. And so it's definitely something that's developed into way more than I ever imagined. My original goal was if we could just get 20 people, 20 businesses to sign up. We have over 30. Nice. And then of course we have all these additional activities and sponsors and things like that. So it's really, it's kind of surreal how it's come together. And I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, okay, let's just do it so that I can like see it all, because I have this vision in my mind and I'm ready to now just like see it come to life. But we still have 2 months, so I still have to wait.
What's the date of that event?
So it's March 8th, which is a Sunday. And we kind of planned it strategically. So it's not on March break weekends. Yeah. And it's in the spring when hopefully we won't get a huge ice storm or anything like that. So people will be able to come out. Yeah. Cool. So, and it'll be at the Evinrude Center, which is a big venue, a big arena in Peterborough. And general admission is $5 at the door. But I think we're also going to do $4 with a non-perishable food donation as well. Okay. So that kind of helps us give back to the community, but then also kind of makes it a bit easier for people to get in the door. Cool. We want it to be affordable because I think one of the big obstacles that people face is they think they can't afford these sort of, I don't like to say alternative, but I guess people would refer to them as alternative healthcare routes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it in the, it's in like that banquet hall thing off of the main?
The banquet hall. Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be, that's a great space. That's where like the Love Local Expo's at as well.
Oh yeah. Is that the Modern Makers Market? Is that the same woman that hosts that?
The Love Local one's done by the Chamber, I believe.
Oh, okay.
The Chamber and like, mostly, I think it's primarily the Chamber.
Okay, cool.
And I know that the like Peterborough Economic Development's tied in with it too, but that's I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be like a really cool opportunity to connect with all these other wellness businesses too, like you said, and build up like the network of referrals and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's listening to the full episode is kind of dialed in a bit more, but we'll definitely get that like clip so that it can be shared and spread the word more about the Peterborough Wellness Expo. And you've still got good time, and that's awesome that you've got more than your goal number of businesses involved too. It's it's really cool because a lot of times with new businesses and people thinking or wanting to start their own business, you need a lot of like I feel like you need a lot of encouragement, like external encouragement from other things, kind of that leading by inspiration, which is part of what we want to do with this podcast too. And it's funny, it's kind of a lot of it's evolved into like small business talk as well. Because there's, I guess part of the reason is this is one of the ways that small businesses get the word out. And if you're working in a 9-to-5 job, it's kind of hard to get to the podcast or whatever, make time for it, or things like that. So it has kind of revolved around that a lot. But you were saying that you like to read a lot. Are there any? What sort of genre is your preferred choice, or do you read anything like with like the business or the self-help kind of stuff?
Oh yeah. The one that I'm working on right now is actually like a pediatric nutrition like textbook, I guess.
Cool.
And it's really, really cool. It's actually an old edition. So you look at the cover and you're like, this is from like the Stone Age, but it's actually so informative and nice. I love it. And I guess I definitely read a lot of those, like, I don't know if I would say self-help or nutrition, but those kind of books, especially when there are ones that are trending, because I know clients are going to ask me about it, right? They're going to ask about Wheat Belly, or, they're going to ask about these big titles. And so I read them just for the sake of being able to say, oh, I know what you're talking about, right? Especially those documentaries on Netflix, the big like conspiracy ones. I'm like, maybe you could glean a handful of facts, but you can't take the whole thing for what it is, right? So I kind of like to look into those things that I know are trending. And but primarily I read, like, I don't even know what you call it, like the Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, fantasy
Guardians.
novels.
Yeah. And they're kind of like for younger kids, but I love it. Like my son's legal name is Samwise from Lord of the Rings. Yeah. And then my daughter, her first name is Nolan, but her middle name is Granger, after Hermione Granger. So yeah, it's a big book thing in our house.
No, it's great. Actually, fantasy novels are my favorite genre. I don't read as many. Like, actually, I'm rereading The Hobbit right now. I
nice.
read it almost every year.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings is like the foundation of my love of books and everything. So
that's awesome.
It's definitely a big influence on me, and like the type of books I like to read. So yeah, it's either I'm either reading like businessy, psychology, nutrition, whatever, in that realm of, I call them more like self-improvement, because the self-help genre, it's got like a bad rap, but then if it's not that, it's straight up just like fantasy novels. Actually, one kind of business book that I read recently was The Tipping Point, and I really liked that one. Actually, I thought that was really interesting, and probably because they draw on so many real life like things, like facts, right? So they talk about Sesame Street and they talk about crime in New York City, and it's like those are things that I've
learned about before, especially like my degree is in anthropology. So like the New York crime, like I was very familiar with that. So kind of learning about it from like how you can take that and apply it to business was really cool.
Yeah.
So I really liked that book in particular. And I would recommend that I would probably recommend that one. Yeah.
It's a good one. Well, Malcolm Gladwell's really like up there as far as popular writers, but all of his, there's not a book that he's written that I wouldn't say is worth reading. But yeah, The Tipping Point is a good one for sure.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of an older one, but actually it stands the test of time. He's done a great job with it. That's great. So like with with kind of the theme of the FlowCast is talking about the things that you're passionate about, that you get into the flow state with, like in the zone. I would have to guess like reading's probably one of them that you get like lost in quite a bit. And actually it's reading is one of the ones that's like kind of the easiest, because especially if it's a good writer, because I can't remember exactly where I came across this idea, but you're essentially reading somebody, if it's a good book, you're essentially reading somebody else's flow state, right? Because they were in that deep state of creativity and flow when they wrote that. And so the book is actually like a translation of it to you. And that's why it kind of, it's one of those things that's very like flow producing for a lot of people. But is there anything else that like comes to mind with that? Like in the past, I've used sort of the examples for me, even like the nutrition consultations where you get so into talking about the kind of things that you're super passionate about with nutrition that you just lose track of time, or you go off on like a tangent with somebody and have to reel yourself in and just stick to the facts and stuff. What sort of things, is that one of the ones that resonates with you?
That is definitely one of the ones. And especially around like Christmas time and the new year, you're visiting with lots of family and everyone wants, big resolutions and wanting to be healthy in the new year. So you always have those conversations and trying to remember this is a family Christmas dinner. So I gotta like keep it, but at the same time, you get excited about it. Right. And so one of the women who's actually helping Rachel and I plan the show, she's kind of our partner in the whole expo, is Sally from Sally Marie Wellness. And she and I, we've been friends for a long time. And so when her and I get together, it's just like, all these things that we've been learning, we just let it, like, I would say her and I really get into that flow state together where we're just like, it's just so natural that we're just talking about all these different things and all related to health and nutrition and wellness. And so that's a big one. And actually another one that I would say, especially since having kids, is like walking is very therapeutic for me. So like I'll pack my kids in the stroller and I'll put on a podcast and I'll just go for like 2 hours and they love it. They're happy to just sit there and look around, and there's so much, and we live in the south end of Peterborough. So there's so much, like there's the water, like the river's right there. And so there's so much for them to see and do. And I just go, and I love that. And it's hard in the winter when I can't do that as much. But yeah, that's definitely something I think that I really enjoy that kind of gets me in that state as well.
Cool. It's also like it's a good sort of like meditative practice too, right? To like the walking, it's a lot of people use that as their source for kind of getting, whether it's business or creativity, just kind of like working through things. And zoning out a little bit, because it's not like it's super intense, but also it's still a physical activity. So that's great. That's like actually that was one of the kind of things that I've been saying a lot for anybody with kind of difficulty with their New Year's resolutions or anything, because people go so like gung-ho into it, and then it's not something you can sustain after a month, and we see such a drop off in in people sticking to their fitness plans.
Yeah.
But if you just include a few walks, even weekly, daily is ideal if you can kind of manage it. It's harder for sure in the winter, and a lot of the trails are really slippery right now. I've fallen like a couple of times in the past week.
And trying to like push a stroller with 2 kids over the snowbanks. Yeah, that can get a little rough.
But getting outside and walking is a really good activity for sure. Yeah,
and I love what you said about kind of just, you sort of implement kind of one thing at a time, right, to keep it sustainable. So depending on who it is, I'll say, for 1 week, you try this new habit.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll say for 1 month, you try this new habit, right? Again, depending on their personality and who they are.
For sure.
And then by the end of the year, I mean, like how many healthy changes is that, right? It could go from as low as 12 to 52, I guess, right? If there's that many weeks in a year, then, And that can have a big difference in someone's life, and that can make it more sustainable when you're just kind of saying, okay, so this week when I first wake up, all I'm going to do is have a glass of lemon water, right? You do that for 1 week. Okay, now I'm going to add in like fasting for a full 12 hours this week. Okay, now I'm doing those 2 things, and I'm going to add my supplements. I'm going to really remember to take my supplements every day this week, right? And so you just kind of build on those things, and that helps to make it more sustainable for people, because I see that all the time. Someone makes the decision to go vegan or dairy free or, gluten free. And then you see them 2 weeks later and, oh, well, whatever happened. Right.
Yeah.
But just kind of building up to that state is I think really important for people, and just keeping it realistic, because it's not realistic to say, I'm going to make this like cold turkey change in my life right now, unless you have some major health condition that kind of drives you in that direction.
Yeah.
But it's not always possible for people. So just kind of one step at a time, for sure.
For sure. I like the reframing it as like, think of how many things that accomplishes in a full year's time. It's a big perspective shift because that is, I think, that's something that I've always tried to adhere to as well when it comes to nutrition coaching, and it is the most sustainable way to go about doing it.
Yeah.
It's just, especially at the new year, it's really hard. And so that's why I'm happy that you repeated the same thing, because that's kind of, it's a good mission to have, is to get that word out there to more people that are trying to just change everything all at once. But the resolutions and breaking them down into smaller things that you can actually take action on for a week or 2 or a month, and build up from there is just so important to that lifestyle change, that long-term change, or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or what else can we?
I feel like that's kind of it. I feel like we hit all the big topics there.
For sure.
I feel like that was really successful.
Yeah. Any other book recommendations, since you're an avid reader?
I read a book a few years ago that was recommended to me, and I usually don't take book recommendations because I'm just very particular about the kinds of books that I like. But I love L.M. Montgomery. I love Anne of Green Gables, and so this woman that I was working with at Julian's place actually recommended The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. And I was not expecting to love it, but I loved it. And it was super good. So I would highly recommend that one. And then I just saw Little Women this weekend, and it was really well done. I really loved it. So of course I gotta recommend that series. It's actually, I think there's 4 books in the series, and Little Women is just the first one. So I would definitely recommend that one. And that's not really a fantasy one, but the classics, those are so good too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, maybe you wouldn't want to read those, but for any of the women listening, definitely recommend those.
I always, I'm always take, classic books are classics for a reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, I don't really discriminate in that. aspect.
Good.
Yeah, there's always stuff to learn from them too. So cool. Well, thanks, Colleen. Thanks
thank you for having
being
me
on the show today. And we'll figure out when we can get Rachel on to get like the other part of Naturally Nested. But until I'm sure we'll run into each other at like the chamber events, and also I'm really looking forward to the Peterborough Wellness Expo.
Yeah, and my husband bought me a infrared sauna session for my birthday, so I'll be back to use that for sure. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you again soon.
All right, thanks.